In today's episode of the Deadly Dozen podcast, I'm going to try and talk a little bit quieter because I've watched previous episodes and I sort of shout while the guest is talking quite calmly. But I'm joined today with Vanessa. So Vanessa's been a long-term member at this gym. She's now a coach at the gym and she's a key figure within the Deadly Dozen. She's the chief of operations, so running the day-to-day. If it wasn't for Vanessa, I think I would have given up on the Deadly Dozen long ago because of the amount of admin that's involved. People underestimate it. So Vanessa's background is actually in Strongwoman and training with big heavy weights, logs and atlas stones and stuff like that. She's incredibly strong. But I'll let you, Vanessa, introduce yourself first. Just a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Who I am, Vanessa, thank you. My background in terms of work is always been in finance. I did a little stint in a university working with the technical team, doing some learning resources as I was getting into sort of web development stuff, but then went back into finance and accounting. Strong woman training, I didn't actually start that until my late 40s when I joined this gym. I'd never done any strength training before. I'd done lots of fitness on and off, running for a long time, so bits here and there, but not until I joined this gym and I discovered all the strongman equipment, and did the classes. Realised, I'm 46 and 47 and this is my thing.
Yeah, pretty strong. Because you're naturally it's not just naturally strong, but you're able to put a lot of weight overhead, deadlift, big weights, atlas stones, and you just loved it really, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely love it, yeah.
And then obviously what happened was, sort of bit of background is you were we spoke about you doing your personal training qualifications because we own an academy for PT and strength conditioning, and Vanessa was wanting to do them qualifications and go into this industry. And obviously it was quite perfect timing because I'd had this idea for Deadly Dozen, and then Vanessa essentially has all this experience in, finance, administration. And I mean, a key part of it is just being incredibly organised. Whereas, as I've talked about before, is I'm sort of the visionary, the strategy guy in the business. I'm not as good at the organisational administrative side of things. And that's the areas that Vanessa takes on. And I think sometimes people underestimate with Deadly Dozen because each event is quite a grassroots, has that community feel. People underestimate the scale of what it's turning into worldwide and also the amount of email communication we get. And what we also find as well, that even though the whole fitness racing community is awesome, there's almost like this road rage phenomenon that when it's over email, people, if you say, look, you pass this transfer window, you've essentially ruined their life and they want to sue you. So there's a lot of, there's a lot to be managed with, and Vanessa does an awesome job of that. Obviously, there's a wider team, and Vanessa's job is essentially managing to make sure that everyone's doing their job, including me and Simon, that tell everyone that they can transfer whenever they want and get spaces, and and then we get shouted at, So there we go. So in the Deadly Dozen podcast, what we go into now is sort of 3 key areas. And it's all centered around ethos. So what we've realized is Deadly Dozen is a race, but it's also an ethos. It's about simple training with a purpose, dumbbells, kettlebells, weight plates. And it's all about having an ethos around the training that we do, the racing that we do. So the first question that we ask is, what is your training and nutrition ethos? So this is what core principles guide the way in which you train and fuel your body.
I think I'm going to say what a lot of people say, and that's consistency. I learned that once I started here, training here. I'd done running around with Harriers, and I loved that, and that was great, and I still love that. But training in here to get the progress, it's consistency, and making sure you get in when you say you're going to get in. If you plan, like if I got in from work and I was just had a really stressful day at work. On one hand, I didn't feel like coming in. I just wanted to sit down. But on the other hand, I knew it would be beneficial for me to come in and just forcing yourself out that door and doing it. And then felt so much better after. Glad I did it. Glad I didn't sit down on the sofa. Felt so much better for doing it. So it's just consistency. When you don't feel like, oh, I've had a rubbish day, I really don't feel like it, that's when you go. That's when you definitely should go.
And that's the discipline rather than just the motivation.
Yeah.
Because that's a good point, actually. She mentioned the Harriers. Is you're like Steve, one of the original hybrid athletes, aren't you? Because you were actually a runner with the Mac Harriers
Yeah.
prior to coming here, and still are a
Yeah.
runner, but then strong woman and running. So it was
Yeah.
sort of real far ends of the spectrum, long distance running.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with that when it comes to consistency. I think one of my key pieces of advice for people is make it non-negotiable. And I used to say to people, when, you know, this is terrible really, but I say when you go to a toilet, you don't consider, should I wipe my ass or not? You do it. And I says, training is the same. If you, terrible, that's what you should say, it gets laughed at. But I used to say to them, like, if you go home and go, oh, should I go training? You've lost. Get a grip. You know, if you wake up in the morning and go, oh, should I go for that run? I'm like, try just going, that thought can't enter your head. So if you say, right, I'm running tomorrow, you run. And it's not a case of, oh, should I brush my teeth this morning before going to work? No, you brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's non-negotiable. As soon as you get home from work and say, should I go gym? Yep.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And that's what we find in this gym, don't we? The people that just turn up. And when you say, there's never that sort of battle. And I see this with PT clients that sometimes, a lot of times, PT clients, they have one-to-one sessions because it makes them more accountable. And they will often say, oh, I sort of second guessed, or I was going to cancel. And there's a lot more internal dialogue around that. So you'd say that's the key component of your training ethos. So how does your week look when it comes to a training program?
It's changed now from what it was, obviously, since becoming involved in Deadly Dozen, in doing this and changing my whole job, basically, because I was a 9-to-5er. So I could, you know, my kids are older. They're not at home, they're at university. So I could go straight after work, or I could go early work, or occasionally I would just throw it in, if I could get in at lunchtime for an extra session, I would do that. Now it's different because I'm working totally different hours around sort of PT clients, gym hours, and so it's become more fluid now. So it's a little bit disorganized at times, but I'm sort of adjusting to that change in life. So it's been a little bit inconsistent recently because I'm adjusting to a whole new way of working. But I'm still doing it, and I'm getting sort of in that flow. So now my training now actually takes more through the day rather than an evening and a weekend. So I get in through the day, which I quite like doing.
And they say, what I've noticed is sometimes with retired people is sometimes the more time you have, the less efficiently you'll use it really. And it's sometimes that when you've only got that hour after work, you get to train every day. And then when you're in the gym like we are now, and you have more time, you don't actually, you're not as structured. So sometimes it's harder to get in. So do you prefer being, obviously it's changed because you've massively shifted in the work that you do, and being in the gym, it's a massive lifestyle change. Do you prefer being on program or off program? And what I mean by that is, do you like having a training program that you follow rigidly, or do you take a more sort of, what we said in a previous podcast, auto-regulation? You go off what you feel. Right, I feel good for strength training today. I feel good to run today. Or I ran 2 days ago, was going to run again. However, legs are feeling a bit sore. I'm going to do upper body. How do you program yourself?
I like both. I like both because I like following a program. I like knowing what I'm doing and working towards that. But I'm very well aware that that some days I'll not feel right. I'll not feel, and I'm still going to train. Like I'll come in and might be working towards sort of 85% of a 1 rep max. And I'll know, and I'll come in, I'll start, and I'll know that I haven't got it in me today. So I'll work off more a case of, right, I'll just do what feels like 85%, which will be a completely different number to what it was. So I kind of mix it in a bit of both. I like working to the program because I like knowing what I'm working to, but I'm well aware how that I'll go with how I feel at the same time.
And would you do, obviously because you've done a lot of strength, would you use strong woman training for fitness racing?
Yes.
And how would you do that?
I like it's the so for example, when you're doing with the fitness race and we do sort of the 2-minute rounds, we do that kind of thing. I really like that kind of training actually, those circuits, the longer rounds, because I find they work quite well. They get my fitness level up. So with that, I've done it with sort of Strongwoman equipment. As a bit of a variation for me, sort of doing the log lifts instead and doing the axle
sort of more
bar.
muscular endurance, but with the strongman, strong woman equipment. And also doing medleys is probably quite a good way of doing it, where you're doing the carries, and obviously the benefit of strong strongman, strongwoman training is the added grip benefit, which is like for farmers carries. Obviously, farmers carries a big part of the strongman world.
The front
and
carry
also
with the
front carries for the deadly dozen,
Mm-hmm.
lots of overhead work. And how would you say that you approach nutrition then, coming from obviously doing the strongwoman and having a strength background, obviously a running background as well? What's your approach to nutrition?
My approach to nutrition is I always try, just generally speaking, I always try and keep my eating sort of simple to basic ingredients and stuff, and not have too much processed stuff in. And the reason being because that obviously I want to be healthy, I want to be fit, I want to eat the right stuff, but at the same time, I know fine well I'll want to order curry at the weekend, or I eat chocolate, and it just eases my mind knowing that if I have those things, I'm not that worried because I know my base diet is quite
80% is good,
is quite healthy. So I don't care that I've just got in from the track race on a Saturday and I've ordered a curry.
So you're essentially flexible at the weekend, is it? Are you strict through the week then?
No, I'm not really strict. I mean, I do have lapses. Chocolate is my pleasure.
It's my wife's as well.
It's my pleasure.
I mean, I say that about my wife, and then she's like, "You eat chocolate, I see," and I'm like,
"Yeah, I eat chocolate. I like chocolate, and I love
flapjack,
and I don't want to give it up. But I'm quite happy not giving it up. Knowing my base diet is all right.
The fundamentals are there.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. So when it comes to the next question, which is about racing and mindset ethos, so it doesn't just have to be about racing. Obviously, you have done high rocks, you've done the deadly. Have you done the deadly dozen race at the track yet? You've not yet, have you?
I've done it as a relay at the track.
As a relay, yeah. So you've done high rocks. Obviously, you've done strongwoman events, but it's also about in general. So what's your ethos when it comes to mindset? And you can talk about things like how you approach racing or competition, but also life as a whole. Are you a high energy person? How do you approach life as a whole in terms of mindset?
I like, and I'm fortunate to be able to do this now. Obviously, a few years ago when my kids were little, I couldn't. I approach training and the race and work, day-to-day life, with a peaceful morning. I like a peaceful morning. I zone out, I have my coffee, and it just sets me for the day. And that gets my mind in the right kind of, I know what I've got to deal with today, I know what I'm doing today, and it just feels like my mind is sort of settled and strong, and I know, and then whatever happens throughout the day, if the shit hits the fan, it's easy to deal with. You can
handle stress well, and you feel calm. Are you a calm person, not a stressy, fiery person?
Yeah, I can be quite fiery.
I would say that you're not someone that, from what I've worked with you, is the thing I like most is like the real raw integrity, where you know you're going to do the job that you do, and you do it well, and it's never half-arsed. That's what really stood out to me initially. And you're not fiery or aggressive, but you want everyone to do things right. And there's a standard, and it's like so if someone's like, if someone can get away with something, they will. You are very much, it's black and white. You do it right, and this is the way it goes. This is the policy we've set. So I'm very much more, sometimes I can be too easygoing. So it's good to have someone like you in the business that's more like, no, I'm very sort of trusting and get on with people, and they're all right. And I think there's nuance to business where people have strengths and weaknesses, and you have to understand that, especially as a CEO, that this person is very good in this area, this person's not so good in this area, and you've got to manage that. But it's also very good to have the sort of executive team level where some people are a lot harsher, more critical, very much process focused. Whereas, like as Simon, we might go, someone goes, can I get on this race? Can I do this? And we're like, yeah, go on. Like, we'll just send it to Vanessa. And you're like, well, this has effects down the line, and it does. And it's having someone that's very process driven is key.
Yeah. I am like that with everything in life, not just work. This is something like, if I'm going to do something, whatever it is, you're cleaning the toilet, I want to do it properly. I don't like going away feeling like I've done a shitty job, or I've just, just doesn't want to. I make mistakes, get things wrong. Everybody does that. But if I feel like I've done it properly, that's fine. I like that. I don't like feeling whatever it is that I haven't done. Down to my lifts, like I did when I was working on my doing a 5 rep max on the squats a year or two ago. I didn't feel like I got quite to the right depth on the last two. I was like, no, I've got to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. And it's not just doing it in the things that you enjoy doing, it's the things that you know you don't enjoy doing, but still having that same quality.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to, this sort of leads into that really, which is essentially what is your work and lifestyle ethos, but we've essentially gone into that. Like how you approach the rest of your life is that everything is quite deliberate and process driven, and it's about integrity, you know, and we'll get onto that when we talk about sort of phrases and words that define your ethos. So would you say that is the key to the way you run your life or operate when it comes to racing or anything? It's about doing it well. Is that the core ethos?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I think integrity, what you said, that's important to me, actually.
Yeah.
Being true to yourself. You know, if it's like when you see on races, if someone sort of, they just want to do it the fastest they can, they don't care how they do it, and they'll do the, you know, the minimum and they'll get away with whatever they can get away with. I think, well, why would you be happy with that? Why not just try, you know, be the fastest you can, but do it properly?
So what's your thoughts on, you're obviously, one of the roles that you've took on so far is being head of the judges. So we get all these amazing volunteers, and every time we do an event, there's never a shortage of just everyone praising the volunteers, saying how amazing they are, how motivational they are, like they make the event, they're incredible. But the one thing that we've got with the Deadly Dozen and all fitness races, but the Deadly Dozen in specific, is elbow extension, you know, hip extension, knee extension. You know, we've got judges that we see people that don't always get picked up for standards. What's your thoughts when it comes to standards on the Deadly Dozen?
Do it as well as you can, do it as properly as you can, but we do understand that sometimes someone has a slight, you know, can't straighten their arm. We do understand that, you know, squats in particular, a lot of people haven't, you know, have that limitation. So it's just about sort of knowing that they are going to as far as, you know, what they can definitely do. That's how far they can go. So it's sort of working with them, knowing that they're not just trying to get, you know, just do a couple of reps like that and then get off with it. They are actually working with them to see that they are actually going as far as they can go. They're trying the hardest, they're doing it properly. So it's just sort of, you know, and that can take experience. Yeah,
and that's something we established, because I remember once, it was the very first race, I come up to the judges and I said, look, there's a human element. If someone's really competitive and you see that and they're up for the top spots, then you need to be anal, you need to be harsh. And I was like, but if someone, you know, whether it's a 70-year-old or it's someone that's struggling, you can take that human approach, understand as a judge, this person is here to participate, they're there to have a good time. And one of the judges turned around, who was quite experienced, and said, you know, through a race, he said, no, I disagree. I think if you enter a race, you do it to standard. If you can't do it to standard, you don't enter. And I was like, and I get what she's saying, that, you know, at every level there's a standard, and if you can't do the standard, and it should be one standard. But I actually think that for the most part, at World Championships, we need more, you know, judges, and everyone at a championship race has to be held to the standard. But when it comes to Deadly Dozen, because what we're trying to say is we're one of the most accessible, scalable. It's a brutal race, but it's accessible, it's scalable. You know, we want adaptive athletes. We want people of all ages. Some people are never going to hit parallel, let alone below parallel. We work to parallel. They're just not able to extend their elbows because of anatomical differences, so that's fine. That even happens in weightlifting. You just point at your elbows, as in Olympic weightlifting. So we will work with individuals. It's just at that upper echelons where we've got to establish that standard. Because we've got a guy that's got double hip replacement. He can't squat. He can't do more than a quarter squat.
No.
But we're not going to stop him doing the race. And spectators might look over and go, look at his squat. And it's like, yeah, but you don't understand the individual circumstances.
We want to be inclusive. And that's one of the things I liked about it. And that's one of the things that actually got me into Hyrox, is when I listened to one of their podcasts. It's like the inclusivity of it. They wanted everyone to take part. And that's what we want. We want everyone to take part. But at the same time, in with that, train for it. You've got to train for it. It's a hard race. So train for it. Do it to the best of your ability. And if you, like Pete you're talking about, he's got that, that's fine. You can still do the race.
Well, it's like someone said to me, though, like, look, we had people that were asking for lighter weights and whatnot. And we set weights that were just about right, in my opinion, across all age groups. That was the idea. One race, one standard. And someone had commented, well, I'm 60 and I think I should be allowed to do lighter weights, and you should if you want to be accessible. And someone commented basically, would you enter a marathon and ask to do 20 miles? Yeah. Would you enter a 10K and ask to do 8K? If you enter a marathon, you have to train to run 26 miles. What the Deadly Dozen's trying to achieve is not what CrossFit has in, there's barriers that, you know, you're just not going to pass in certain competitions because of the strength requirement. Same with Strongman and Strongwoman, with novice and intermediate comps. With the Deadly Dozen, in my opinion, as an S&C coach that's spent over a decade or more in the sport and worked with thousands of individuals, I think we have selected weights that are challenging but appropriate. So when you enter a Deadly Dozen, not only have you got to complete 12 400s, but you've also got to be able to lift the weights. So if you can't lift the weights overhead, you've got to spend weeks in the gym training your upper body. So that's the way it is. So what we do is, to finish this podcast, is we go through what is 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, classic racing. And it's 3 words or phrases that define your ethos, 2 habits you swear by, 1 final piece of advice for the listener, and that's the podcast. So the first one, which is 3 words or phrases that define your ethos.
Just going off what was said there, I would say be true to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, have some integrity. Do things properly. I would say those.
You've had 3 there almost, but any more?
Yeah. No.
It's all about, you know, be true to yourself, integrity, all very internal drivers. I always like it when they almost describe discipline and integrity as like discipline is self-respect. And being true to yourself, and integrity is having that respect for yourself.
It doesn't matter if you know, I don't know who said this phrase, I can't remember, but you know.
Churchill. That's what they said, the Churchillian grift, which is where everything, you don't know who said it, say Churchill said it,
you know,
or Mandela.
Integrity, sort of, you know, with no one watching, do it properly. It doesn't matter. No one. I can't remember the phrase. I'm gonna butcher it, but
attribute it to me.
Yeah. But you know, don't do things just because someone's watching. Do it because it's right, because it's for you, with no one watching.
Yeah. The strongest driver is an internal driver at the end of the day. But if you're doing it because of external factors, then you're driven by other people's opinion. I remember when I used to compete in combat sports. Towards the end of like being a young lad competing, I was competing and I was so conscious about what everyone at school, if I lost, and I was like, it needs to be an internal driver where it's like, I'm winning for me, I'm competing for me, not because what my dad thinks or what my mates think and stuff like that. Internal drivers are far stronger than external ones, like recognition, if you're doing it for yourself. So what would you say is 2 habits you swear by?
Habits I swear by, sort of, in the morning, habit is actually, it doesn't have to be in the morning, it can be any time to have some alone time, be on your own.
And be mindful in that time.
Yeah, be mindful in that time, and switch your phone off and put it away. It doesn't have to be for very long, but have some period in the day where it goes over there, switched off, on silent, and I don't touch it. It doesn't have to be for very long, it can be for 5 minutes at a time, but, you know.
I agree with that. I remember when I was working, you know, doing the long shifts in the gym, 85 hours a week in the gym, and I was back-to-back PT. So I'm not doing as much coaching as I used to, but it was like 12, 13 hours a day sometimes of coaching. And the thing that got me through that was having that 5-10 minutes with a brew, where the brew was like complete mindfulness deload. And it was like, they say that, you know, they often say, don't try to meditate for half hour a day, meditate for 5 minutes while having a coffee. Yeah. And meditate may be just a fancy word for just shut down a little bit.
Meditation isn't always just sitting in the yoga pose or going om. It's just sitting, having your coffee and just sort of, you know, being aware of your surroundings, just, you know, pondering things and just,
And it could be dead scrolling as long as it's not turns into half an hour or an hour. But you'd say without the phone is key.
I'd say without the phone. Have some alone time. No
external device, no devices that are gonna. No, I think that's key. It's very easy to get addicted. I remember once someone said that if the first thing you grasp in the morning is your phone to scroll through the social media, you're addicted. Yeah. So that. But that's the. I mean, it's better on the toilet. It's better than reading shampoo bottles, but you know, the ingredients. Right. So the final one then is 1 piece of advice for the listener.
I would say just do it. Just get out there, get training, and do it. Don't think about how fast you're going to do it, how well you're going to do it, but don't think about how fast you're going to do it. Don't think about how anybody else is going to do it. Just you do it. Focus on, there's a mountain of information now on Deadly Dozen on the website with the instructional videos or whatever. Practice them and just do it, enter it, and just get around it and be proud of yourself when you cross the finish line.
Take the leap and dive straight in.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And like I say, throughout that whole podcast, brilliant advice. Agree with everything you've said. Like I say, this year, 2025, we've sold out every race now.
Yeah.
We're going to be launching the 2026 season. I want to say again in front of the audience, thank you, Vanessa, for being a part of Deadly Dozen. I genuinely couldn't have done it without you and the wider team.
Well, I knew I did want to be, as soon as you mentioned it and talked about it, I knew I wanted to be part of it.
So Vanessa was, along with Becky, was the first person to sort of come on board, became sort of chief of operations, and manages the day-to-day running of the business, takes over all the things that ultimately I just can't do anymore. People, I get dozens and dozens of messages, dozens of emails. It's just not, honestly, it's non-stop. And, as a piece of advice from me for anyone that's running the business, it's as it starts to scale, you need to have individuals that are very good at what they do. And people often say it's hard to give stuff away. And what the key is you might be very good as a generalist. You've created this business, but you need to start getting people that are better at, they might not be better, they're not you, and that's fine, but find people that are better at the individual tasks than you are. And that's what you are. You're much better at the emails, much better at the spreadsheets, much better at tracking things, much better than making sure that everyone's doing their jobs while my head's in the clouds. And that's the key to business.
You're all creative with all the ideas.
Find the individuals that are really good, because you are so much better than me at so many aspects and you do a brilliant job, and it's been fundamental to the growth of Deadly Dozen so far. Yeah. So I really appreciate it, Vanessa. That was a fantastic podcast.
Thank you.
And thanks for thanks for being on.
Thank you.